After the devastating losses at the Battle of Arausio, Terra Cimbricus now gripped the Roman capital. But despite the desperation in the north, from the south came a reprieve. News of Roman victory. The Numidian king Jugurthan had been brought to heel after a 6-year campaign ended in his capture. The man who claimed victory in northern Africa was Gaius Marius, consul and general of Rome. Marius was a man of humble beginnings, but despite this, he was a man driven by an insatiable lust for power. He was the embodiment of the new Rome, both brutal and brave, cunning and, where needed, merciless in his treachery. These qualities had made him few friends among the Roman elite, but his humble beginnings and his common touch had made him popular among the lower classes. They saw in him a saviour of Rome, and even before he had displayed his prize, Jugurthan, in chains in the streets of Rome, they had elected him consul in absentia. Despite the celebrations upon Marius's return, the situation in Rome was dire. With such heavy losses in the north and a long drawn-out campaign in the south, Rome's human resources were almost completely depleted. Marius, though, had faced a similar situation in the south, and during his previous consulship had enacted drastic measures to remedy it. The Marian reforms enabled the recruitment of soldiers from the lowest classes of Roman society, the Sapiti Sensi. These landless citizens were generally thought to be unworthy of military service, and despite such a measure being offensive to many of the Roman elite, given the extreme danger Rome now faced, Marius found little opposition in the Senate. Because of the opportunities for permanent employment and the chance to prove themselves and move up the social ranks, the landless masses flocked to Marius's new armies. But with one problem solved, another presented itself. The Cimbri were at Rome's door, and despite the eagerness of the new recruits, they were untrained in the ways of war. If the Cimbri and their allies fell upon Rome now, she would be able to do little to resist them. Yet, inexplicably, the Cimbri did not march south. No one knows why the mighty Cimbri passed up on such a tactical advantage and moved west instead of south, but they did. It is also unclear what happened in their adventures in northern Spain. Some reports claiming they sacked the local tribes, whilst others that they were beaten back by them. All we do know is that it was not long before the Cimbrian horde once again marched north into more familiar territory in northern Gaul. For the northern folk, for whom bravery and audacity were hallmarks of nobility, the reputation of Boiorix would have grown to an almost godlike level. As he marched north, such was the celebration of his name, Celtic tribes flocked to his banner, in search of their own glories against the mighty Rome. Back in Rome, and unaware of the Cimbrian movements, the maxim Terra Cimbricus still gripped the city. The elusive nature of the Cimbri only adding to the terror. A force, proven in battle against the best of Rome, was still out there, somewhere, and could strike at any time. Marius took the time given to him to train his troops. He did so in a manner that would revolutionize the armies, forcing the men to carry their own equipment and do away with cumbersome supply caravans. These new soldiers were given the nickname Marian Mule. Marius was determined to make his new army fitter and more hardy than those before him, whom he thought had become soft and too used to the luxury of Rome. Whilst his new regime was harsh, he made time to ingratiate himself with the common soldier, often sharing in the tedious tasks and even celebrating the murder of his own nephew. His nephew had a reputation for abusing his position and forcing himself upon young soldiers, and when such a soldier resisted him with lethal force, Marius did not condemn him and sentence him to death as would be the normal course of action, but held him up as just. Back in the north, 2 years after the Battle of Arausio, in around 103 BC, the noble Cimbri, led by the mighty Boiorix, done with their preparations, once again began to march. Boiorix had decided to split the Cimbrian forces and approach Rome on 2 fronts. The Cimbri and the lesser allies would approach from the east, through the Carnic Alps, whilst the Teutones and Ambrones, led by Teutobod, would approach from the west and enter Italy via Transalpine Gaul. A year later, in 102 BC, news came to Rome that the Cimbri were approaching the northern limits of Roman rule, with not 1, but 2 vast armies. Such was the confidence in Marius that on hearing this news, the Roman public voted him consul for the 3rd consecutive time, and before this war was out, he would serve 5 terms in succession. This was unprecedented in Roman history, not least because Roman rules stipulated that no man should serve more than 1 term consecutively, for fear of corruption. And so the stage was set. From the north came Boiorix, tamer of Rome, who in seeking new lands for his folk had brought 5 Roman consuls to their knees, and Rome on the brink of existence. From the south, the ruthless and insatiable Marius, whose devotion to victory was so great that before setting out to war, he ceremonially sacrificed his own daughter, Calpurnia, to secure the favour of the gods and victory. The fate of Europe now rested in the fates of 2 men.